Hello, I'm James Preston and welcome to another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks exclusive to Kalkine TV. With the opening of the economy beginning once again, travel restrictions being eased and in-person learning back on the cards, students might be on the lookout for cheap accommodation. And fortunately, Student One Accommodation provides a solution. Student Accommodation One is a dedicated accommodation website for students. It provides an online platform for students and accommodation providers to connect. And Anton Jason founded the company back in 2009, and he joins me now to discuss the inner workings of Student Accommodation One. Anton, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
Anton, great to have you. For those who aren't familiar with Student Accommodation One, tell our viewers a little bit about it. Is it a little bit like Airbnb but with a focus on the student subgroup?
Yeah, it's a little bit like Airbnb. We sort of combine all the possible accommodation options for students. We have shared accommodation, apartments for rent, and also homestay on a single platform. That's how we differentiate us between us and Airbnb. And our audience is students and also mainly students and young professionals.
And how have you seen the platform grow over time? Has the business also enjoyed financial growth with it?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. During this pandemic, our traffic has quadrupled. The business has grown quite significantly, especially we started the journey in 2009, and since then it's been growing very well. If we look at our listings, initially in 2009, we started it's a small company, and we started a very small team. Since then, we have built partnership with a lot of partners overseas, and we have listings in USA, in United Kingdom, Canada, and Singapore, and obviously Australia, and many other cities around the world.
And how many listings would you say you have, for example, in Australia? Is it well in the thousands?
Yeah, well in the thousands. So we got over probably in around 30,000 listings in our database.
Wow.
At the moment. Yeah. It's quite
wonderful. And I mean, you've mentioned
combined.
there as well, there's obviously share housing in general, there's hostels and things like that. What typically is the focal point of students? When they're coming to you, what are they looking to achieve with their accommodation?
That's actually one of the reasons our strategy is to provide as many options as possible for students. The reason for that because students have a different lifestyle and choices, have a different budget, and have a different needs. So that's why we have a range of accommodation ready for them, so they're able to pick the one that actually going to suitable for their needs.
It's very interesting as well. You mentioned a little earlier in our chat that your bottom line has grown quadruple during this COVID period, which I find bizarre. I would have thought with the lack of international students that would have actually dipped quite a lot. We know that universities, for example, are struggling at the moment. Obviously, students, when we equate university, we equate students and thus the accommodation off the back of that. How has COVID changed things for you?
We saw a dip back in 2020 when the lockdowns around the world actually took place. But we're seeing a lot of visitors coming back and look for accommodations in Canada, in UK. So we're seeing growth now in 2021. And obviously, I feel like we are already seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm seeing that 2022 will be a good year for students and also student accommodations. In terms of our growth in 2021, I feel like the growth is changes to our website in terms of the usability, experience, in the customer experience, and also additional partnerships that we form around the world actually attribute to the number of traffics that we are getting. That's why we have our growth has been during pandemic has been significant.
Now, Now, obviously, over the past 2 years, things have been very different for everybody. We've had different rules come in, whether it be square meterage, for example. You can't have a certain amount of people inside an indoor space. Has that presented a challenge for you? Like in the event of, for example, a hostel where you might have previously had 12 people, was it all of a sudden a case of you could only offer, for example, 6 spaces in such an accommodation?
Yeah, so a student accommodation on itself doesn't provide any. We don't own any building to or provide a student accommodation letting. So our partners or the accommodation providers are the one that provided the listings. So usually they put on the listings that this particular room have a number of people or has a capacity or the number of people that they can host. So they put rules and the descriptions. On the listings, how many number of people they can host on a particular room. Obviously, different country has a different rules, but yeah, obviously we have now on most of the listings we see COVID restriction take place. We have a COVID rules on some of the listings as well.
And what does that mean for student accommodation one, though? When you get those rules coming in from the various venues that might say, well, look, instead of the 12, we can only do 6, do you in turn see perhaps a surge in traffic coming to you as a result of more people having to look at more different places instead of all being able to go into the one? Does that have a positive flow-on effect for what you do?
It does. I guess it does have a positive flow-on effect that people actually looking around to different more probably going through pages more, looking at the different accommodation in more details. However, I don't see much changes in terms of number of traffic, but probably it's more like the user behavior, a little bit of change because they need to read more carefully in terms of how the COVID restriction take place in a particular accommodations.
Now, Anton, you mentioned the company has grown. Obviously, the team has grown as well. I imagine it started with just yourself. How big is the team now?
We have few people. It's less than 10 people. It's growing in and out because we don't actually have permanent people that actually working continuously for our side. We engage our people based on the needs. So they usually in the freelance or they do it part-time. The number could be sometimes between 3 to 5 and shrink. It depends on the needs. When we have a new partner, for example, then we expand the team and we reduce the team when we don't actually have anything in terms of we don't have to deliver or add more features onto the platform. So yeah, it's really dynamic, and especially in the COVID era, we have a lot of people. We actually able to communicate people like through the video conference. It's becoming the norm. So it's quite different. So it's getting more easier in terms of how we communicate, how we work between teams, how we collaborate. It's different, and in terms of the team size, we sort of shrink and grow based on the needs.
Now look, you've got tens of thousands of different listings. How do you procure them? Is there sort of a qualification process where it must meet a certain amount of criteria, or does it just have to fall in a price range? And is that an automatic sort of process where you find any other listings and it's drawn in, or is it all manually done?
Yeah, so our strategy for our partner has been always to market their products and make it easy to onboard their catalog or their inventory to our platform. So we've been blessed that we have a strong technology team that able to give us flexibility to be able to connect to our partners. So most of our connectivity, they're all automated. It happens in the background, and some of our partner actually offers what we call a feature that we call a verified listings. So the listings has been for verified listing, the accommodation has been checked by representative of our partner has been checked. The location or the address is the authenticity of that listing has been checked. So they actually went to visit the property and takes a photo of the properties to make sure it's all authentic. And we also have a feature called 24 hours safety period. So this is for international student who arrive at the destination country, and if they visit the accommodation that have booked through our website, through our partner as well, and they found a discrepancy or something that isn't matched with what they saw previously on the site, they could contact the customer care team of our partner, and they will help them to find an alternative accommodations, or they will help to refund the rent. So yeah, so the listing, we have a verified listings. We have the listing that have 24-hour safety periods offered by our partners.
Wonderful. Now, you mentioned partners there again. That's been a frequent feature of our chat so far. Can you elaborate a little bit on exactly who your partners are?
We have our major partner is Uniplaces, so that's one of them, and we also have our homestay partners like homestay.com, and few others in our inventory.
Wonderful. Now, obviously, we mentioned at the start that it's a little bit similar to Airbnb, not quite the same thing. Who would you say in that case then are your direct competitors, and if you do have any for that matter, and if you do, what separates what Student Accommodation One does compared to them?
Yeah, so student accommodation, we really target our primary audience is students. What we try to do in Student Accommodation One is to understand the student needs. So the customer care team of our partners really understand the location of university and the needs of students. So if we ask for send an inquiry to the customer care team, they would try to find an alternative location for the students. So the difference with the Airbnb, for example, they more like short-term accommodations, and student accommodation one audience is geared towards more towards students. And we actually started prior to we started prior to Airbnb as well. So we started the journey in 2009. We believe we are the first site that combines share accommodation and homestay.
And still going strong 12 years later, so you're definitely doing something right, that is for
Still
sure.
going.
Now, Anton, just before I let you go, what else would you like to leave our viewers today? Where can they find what you're doing, and what's looking forward for, say, 2022, obviously post-COVID, and maybe for the next 5 years as well?
Yep, so I would say for students who are looking for accommodations overseas, or the international students who doesn't have much information about the destination country, probably it would be good to use the verified listings features on our site, because it gives them a sort of a safety net in case the listing that they book is not actually the verified listing. So that's actually going to help international students. And in terms of what's on for 2022, we are looking to more partnerships around the world, and to bring more options for students.
Brilliant. That's exactly what we like to hear as we begin to open up and hopefully continue to do so. Anton, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's Anton Jason, the founder of Student Accommodation One. And if you missed any part of that interview, simply head across to our YouTube channel, Kalkine Media. That's all for this edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks. I'm James Preston, reminding you to stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.